Hello guys, today we're going to review Star Wars Maul Lockdown written by Joe Schreiber. So it's a novel really didn't had a lot of high expectations going on. I really wasn't expecting much given the fact that it's not a book that is really relevant in the grand scheme of things in the Star Wars universe concerning the grand plan of the Sith. However, it's a book that really surprised me because although it's not, really important, it's nonetheless very a fun book to read. And although it's short, it's really short and sweet and to the point. So the first thing that you will notice right off the bat when you listen, when you read this book, is that it's really fast paced. It doesn't get tedious or anything. It's really oriented towards the action, and speaking of which, the action starts right from the first sentence of the novel. And every time you read it, you'll notice that at each end of chapter, it's always going from one point to the other without losing any pace or any time. It doesn't waste time with anything. It goes straight to the point, and you just can't get enough of it, and it's really fun. And speaking of which, it's a really brutal novel. Well, at least for the standards of Star Wars, it's in my opinion, it's probably one of the most gory, one of the most violent Star Wars novels, one of the most goriest ones, which is normal given the fact that it's Joe Schreiber that wrote it. He's the one who wrote Death Troopers a long time ago. So, the story of this book goes like this. So, Darth Maul is sent by Darth Sidious to a prison, really a heavyweights prison called the Cog Hive 7. It's a prison that's meant to send people in, very dangerous criminals, and basically send them there to die. They're pit against one another in bouts that are really death matches where the gambling community of the galaxy bets on who's going to be the winner depending on which match is being played. And Darth Maul knows this, but he's sent there nonetheless because he has to identify and eliminate, or at least that's what Sidious tells him. He has to find a guy named Iram Radzik. He's a notorious arms dealer and a bit of a mystical figure in the crime world, very a legend, so to speak. People are not even sure if he's real or just a legend, or if he's a group of people rather than a single person. But Sidious is convinced that he's a living being, and that Darth Maul needs to eliminate him. However, Darth Maul must do more than just eliminate him. He has also a secondary task that I can't reveal, otherwise it's going to spoil you the entire book, but it connects to another book which I'm not going to mention in order to not spoil anything. And Darth Maul, however, is constrained because he can't use the Force. He cannot reveal his true identity. He cannot, reveal to the galaxy that there's a Sith in a prison. So Darth Maul has to survive these death matches while trying to identify this inmate in the prison. And speaking of which, this novel introduces, or at least features, a lot of notorious Star Wars characters that we read around this timeline in the Legends Expanded Universe timeline, so to speak. I'm not going to name them, otherwise it's going to spoil you. It's very nice to see that the author thought to plug them in. However, there's one problem, and this is the main problem I have with this novel, is that the timeline is not coherent with the other novels. So some events happen in this novel that are in contradiction to the timeline set by the previous novels, and therefore there's some errors, so to speak. But it's really the only major flaw of this novel. And speaking of which, the setting of this novel goes like this. So it's really a very typical sort of prison action story where you have this corrupt warden. You have these really insidious prison guards who are sadistic, who like to troll and get their power trip with prisoners by torturing them, by being really cocky and whatnot. And of course, you have all these very dangerous, top of the line prison inmates who are very dangerous, but who Maul easily, of course, subdue them because he's so strong. And speaking of which, this novel really ties in well with the expanded universe because the first, well, it's not a spoiler because it's literally the first chapter, but Darth Maul fights a Yuzong Van, and it's really epic. Darth Maul doesn't shy away one bit from shredding him to pieces, and it's absolutely satisfying to read. So yeah, I would say this novel is definitely worth reading. It's straightforward and to the point. There's no tedious chapters in this novel. Every chapter feels like it's needed. It is meant for a specific to explain a specific story point, so you're not bored or anything when you read this book. It's just one chapter after another, and you can't wait to read the next one. So definitely a good read. I would highly recommend reading it for at least the fun that it gives you to read this novel. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll see you to the next Star Wars review video. Ciao.